on, and then turn it off when you're.
Good morning. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Committee of Adjustment public hearings are now conducted in a hybrid in-person and virtual format. Some applicants and participants will make their submissions in person, and others will participate virtually by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform. The meetings are also streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel, and anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. Those who want to participate virtually and have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone and have the option of participating via video or audio only. All virtual participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, you will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to panelist when your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. At all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. For both in-person and virtual participants, Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline. Those participating through WebEx are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. People attending in person today who want to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must fill out a decision request card, and those participating virtually need to submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email because the Committee of Adjustment and the Toronto Local Appeal Body will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, you may be able to appeal the decision to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT. However, the provincial government amended the Planning Act and generally removed rights of third parties to appeal Committee of Adjustment decisions. Only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, specified persons and public bodies, as those terms are defined in the Planning Act, are permitted to appeal decisions of the Committee of Adjustment. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. With respect to the hearing procedure, I will call each item in order listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. Any presentation or other materials you wish to submit to the committee must have been emailed in advance of the hearing. Staff and committee members cannot accept materials at the hearing. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and will make a presentation to the committee on the application. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application, if substantially revised, to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Generally, we first call on speakers in the hearing room and then those participating through WebEx. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. So first of all, does anyone have any conflicts on the agenda today? Anyone on the panel? No? Okay. Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, do we have any minutes to approve?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do not.
Do we have any deferrals?
Why don't we do the closed files first?
Sorry, yes.
No problem.
Any closed files?
We have one file to close this morning. It's file number A0143/24NY. The address is 74 Riddell.
Thank you. I think this is the first closed file we've had, so do we need to hear from anybody? No, we just need a motion to close the file. Could the committee provide a motion to close the file?
Through you, Madam Chair, happy to provide a motion to close the file.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. A seconder? Mr. Fazeli? Thank you. All in favor? That is unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, then I guess we move on to deferrals.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have two deferrals that we know of in the 10 a.m. time slot. Why don't we start with item number 134, Pemberton.
134 Pemberton, okay. Do we have the applicant here? This is an application for consent to divide one lot into two.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, it's an application to consent a lot into two, and actually it's connected with two other minor variances applications as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, if we just have the agent's name and address, please.
Yes, could you please state your name and address?
Yes, Mehdi Hosseini from Mehdi Hosseini Design Studio. The address is 201 Steeles Avenue East, Toronto, Ontario.
Thank you. And the reason for the deferral?
After we received the report from the planner assigned to the file, we decided to defer the case so we have more time to work on the proposal, and we can come back to the committee with a better proposal to have a chance to get that approved.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions of the agent? No. Go ahead, Mr. Allison.
Yeah, just for the applicant. Just looking at the staff report, it seems that the issue has to do with the consent itself. So just my question to the applicant is, what changes do they propose to make if the issue itself is with the consent of the lot into two?
So the reason is that we want to have more time so we can talk to the planning department and see if there is any reasonable changes that we can make. If not, then probably next time we can ask for withdrawal. But for now, we want to defer it so the client has a chance to go through details and see if they can make any changes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, so I believe we do have someone in person interested in this application. Yes, you can come forward to the podium. So the applicant has requested a deferral of the application. So we just want to hear whether you have any concerns about the deferral, not the merits of the application. Can you turn the mic on, sorry, and state your name and address first?
Yes. My name is Robin Collier. I live at 57 Pemberton Avenue. I'm the owner.
Okay, and do you have any concerns with the deferral request by the applicant?
No, my comments were directed to the application itself.
Okay, thank you.
So I won't be able to comment further than that.
No, not at this point.
At this point.
If it comes back to committee, you'll have a chance to make your comments. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go into committee, and someone want to make a motion?
Through you, Madam Chair, happy to bring a motion to defer the subject application to allow the applicant more time to work with community planning and address some of the concerns that they raised in their staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. And do I have a seconder? Ms. Martin? Sorry, you can speak to staff afterward, but once we're in committee, you're not permitted to address the committee. All right, so we have a motion and a seconder. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have a second deferral request. Item number 5, 64 Clanton Park Road.
All right, and do we have the applicant for that address?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Roshan Thuru. I'm a planner at Design Plan Services, located at 87 Skyway Avenue, Suite 200, and I am the agent for this application.
Thank you, and would you like to explain the reason for the deferral?
Yes, as noted in my formal deferral request letter, I am requesting a deferral to provide more time for a client to consider and potentially revise the proposal and obtain a new zoning notice in an attempt to satisfy planning staff. Therefore, I would ask this application be deferred. I will be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the committee members have questions? No? All right. We have, looks like 2 people. 1 person in person, it would appear. Please come forward. And we're asking for your comment on the deferral, not on the actual application at this point. There's a microphone, just make sure it's on, and state your name and address first.
Yes, hi. My name is Eyal Zilnik. I live next door at 66 Clanton Park Road. I don't have an issue with the deferral. I came here to be visible to show that I'm willing to participate in these proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, anyone? Okay, and then it appears we have somebody online.
Through the chair, that neighbor has not signed in.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I guess we can take this into committee. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion.
Great.
I make a motion to defer 64 Clanton Park Road to allow the applicant to provide more time to work with planning staff to revise the proposal.
Thank you. And a seconder? Mr. Fazeli, thank you. All those in favor of the deferral request? That is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, is that all of the deferrals?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's all we have at the 10 a.m. time slot. Why don't we start with item number 2?
Thank you. All right, we have 148 Shelburne Avenue. This is an addition to an existing synagogue and a reduction in parking. We have variances for west side yard and parking requirement. On file, we have plans, a cover letter, parking justification study, an arborist report, presentation, transportation services memo, 10 letters of support, and 3 late letters of support. Do we have the applicant with us? If you would please come forward to the podium and state your name and address first.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Caitlin Allen. I'm a planning consultant at Bousfields, and our address is 3 Church Street, Suite 200, Toronto, Ontario, M5E1M2. and we're the consultants retained by the congregation, Shove Mayim, who own the existing site and operate the existing synagogue. I'm here with representation from the synagogue as well as the architect.
Thank you. Do we have anybody here or online to speak to this item? It doesn't appear from our list that we do, but I just want to double check. There's nobody in the audience. Okay. All right. Does the committee require a presentation on this? No?
Through you, Madam Chair, I also wanted to highlight there is a late counselor support letter as well in our file.
Thank you. All right. I don't think we need a presentation on this, so unless the committee has any questions or you would like to say something about it, you can go ahead.
Okay, yes, I can be brief, just in terms of, we do have a presentation available if we want to walk through things in more details. I also provided a planning letter outlining the justification for the variances. I do just want to add, just based on that introduction, there is also a lot coverage variance. There's 3 variances. So just want to ensure that that is clear in terms of what's being requested. Also online is a parking justification study submitted by the transportation consultant. I do want to flag that Transportation Services initially filed a memo requesting a deferral, but there was a bit of a misunderstanding in one of the points. We were able to resolve the issue quickly. They were very responsive, and an updated memo stating that they have no objections was filed. So just for clarity as to why there are those 2 memorandums. Community Planning also advised us via email that they have no objections to the application, although that wasn't formally posted to the site. As mentioned, Councillor Cole has written a letter of support, and there have been multiple letters of support provided by the local residents, and no letters of objection have been filed. I'll add one more procedural point in that an amendment to the site, the existing site plan that was required to build the existing synagogue will be required, and we've engaged in that process with the city already. So that's underway. So in summary, this is going to add an expanded synagogue, or expanded use for the synagogue to better serve the needs of the congregation. And we want to thank everyone for their review and responsiveness and engagement during this process. And we respectfully request that the committee approve the application. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? No? Thank you. We'll take this into committee now. All right.
I can put forward a motion to, if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put forward a motion to approve this application. I think it meets the 4 tests, and transportation has no objection, as we've been told. Planning does not either. So I think it's a valid application and should be approved.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Do we have a seconder? Ms. Sankar? Thank you. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. All right, thank you. Your application's been approved.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to item 3, 227 Parkholme Avenue. This is an application for a new 2-story dwelling. We have variances for lot coverage, west and east side yards, building length, and eave projections. On file, we have a survey, plans, presentation, a revised zoning notice, 3 letters of support, an arborist letter, and a forestry memo. Do we have the agent with us?
Meher Manias, the agent.
Hello, good morning. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Meher Manias, number 1 Teakwood Grove, Toronto, M3B 2H9.
Thank you. Committee, is there anyone else here to speak to this item today? 227 Parkholme Avenue? No. All right, committee, do we need a presentation? No. So the committee is indicating that we don't need a presentation unless there's something you would like to point out to the committee for the application. We'll just go into committee to make a decision.
Just one point is this house is for an empty nesters. The bulk of the variances are related to accommodating the primary room on the main floor. Hence, we need a slight increase in footprint and reduce setbacks at just the front portion of the house. The back portion of the house complies. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the applicant? No? Okay, thank you. So thank you very much. We will take this into committee now. Any discussion or a motion? Ms. Sankar?
Yeah, no discussion if my colleagues don't have anything else to add. I do believe that this is a really minor and appropriate application, and for those reasons, I'll put forward a motion to approve, and I'll make it subject to forestry condition number 2.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Ms. Martin? Second. And all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Your application's been approved. All right, item number 4, 133 Airdrie Road. Do we have the applicant? This is an application to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling with a secondary suite in the basement. There was a previous application at committee on July 27th, 2023, which was partially approved. This application today is for a variance for side yard. Weird.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning. Could you please state your name and address?
My name is Nafisa Zangiabadi. I'm the applicant. My address is 30 Apple Orchard Path, Thornhill.
Thank you. I don't believe we have anybody here to speak to this item or online. Do we need a presentation? Anyone? No. Okay, we have a question from Mr. Allison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick clarifying question. I just want to confirm with the applicant, and my understanding is that initially with this application, they were proposing a side yard setback of 0.48 meters, and now the drawings have been amended to propose 0.91 meters where 1.2 is required. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, because that one was an existing wall. And due to the safety, we decided to move to a new house instead of a renovation. And we needed that space to have enough space for the digging and safety. So we're actually improving the variance from the original permit too.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you. So if we don't need a presentation and there's nothing else that you would like to add, we will take it into committee, unless there's anything else you would like to add.
No.
Okay, let's take this into committee.
Okay, I'm happy to make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
All right, I'll make a motion for 133 Airdrie for one variance. It's minor in nature. And I'll make a motion to approve it, subject to forestry condition number 2.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 5. Sorry, your application has been approved.
Thank you.
Oh, right, 5 was deferred. So number 6, 41 ESGORE Drive. This is an application for a new detached dwelling. We have variances for south side yard, lot coverage, height of first floor above established grade, building length, building depth, height of all side exterior main walls, height of building, and roof eave projection. On file, we have plans, a survey plans, revisions, an email revision email, revised plans, photos, a community planning report, letter of concern, 5 letters of support from 26 Haddington, 34 and 44 Esgore Drive, 112 Ridley Boulevard, and 116 Joycey Boulevard. Do we have the applicant? Please.
Committee members,
Please go ahead.
my name is Bonnie Tang.
Go ahead.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Bonnie Tang, and I am a planner at Thorstone Consulting Services, here to represent the property owners of 41 Esgore Drive for this minor variance application.
And could you please state your address?
Yep, Thorstone Consulting address is 93 North Street, Sutton, Ontario, L0E1R0.
Thank you. So this application doesn't, is no anyone here in the audience to speak to this application? No, and it doesn't appear we have anybody online. So committee members, do we need a presentation on this? Okay. Yeah. All right. So we would like a presentation on this, please. You have 5 minutes to present.
Through the chair, I do have a short presentation that was revised and sent in yesterday that I would ask city staff to share at this time if possible. Perfect, thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. This air photography is just to show context of the location of the subject property in comparison to the immediate neighborhood. As you can see, the subject property is located within an existing established neighborhood, and the neighborhood consists of both newer and older homes and are mostly single detached dwellings. Next slide, please. The proposal is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new 2,823 square feet replacement dwelling on the property. The minor variance application was originally submitted on October 1st with 8 variances. Since Thorstone has been retained, the application has since been revised to remove 3 variances, which results in a total of 5 requested variances to support the proposed new dwelling. In addition, 2 of the 5 requested variances have also been reduced. Next slide, please. The site plan provides visual context of the proposed building on the property. As part of the property's redevelopment, a pool is also proposed at the rear yard for amenity purposes. Next slide, please. When we were retained by the property owners to assist with the application, we had a meeting with the architect applicants to review the site plan. As a result of that meeting, we suggested revisions to the proposed dwelling, which resulted in the removal of 3 variances. Coincidentally enough, after my meeting with the applicant, the city had also requested that we make a revision to the side yard setback. The 3 variances that are no longer requested include the following: the minor side yard, the minimum side yard setback, the maximum east projection, as well as the maximum building depth are all no longer required. Next slide, please. The revision to the proposed development resulted in a total of 5 variances that are currently being requested. We are requesting approval of the following variances: maximum lot coverage of 37.83%, maximum height of first floor above established grade of 1.48 meters, maximum building length of 18.4 meters, maximum height of side exterior main walls using side lot line of 9.06 meters, as well as maximum height of 10.5 meters. Next slide, please. The applicant has spoken with their surrounding neighbors and has provided the site plan for their information. As a result, we have received 5 letters of support, which the committee should have as part of your package. We also did receive 1 general support email with a question regarding the pool grading from an abutting neighbor to the east. We ensured the neighbor that the proposed pool would not result in any grading that would cause water from the subject property to flow onto theirs, and that the proposed house and pool would require an engineered lot grading plan. In addition, we did receive one letter of objection from the neighbor to the north. The neighbor supports the redevelopment of the property, but has a concern with the proposed dwelling length. This slide includes a figure to the left that shows the as-of-right building envelope in a dotted red line, which would be the 17 meters building length. And it also shows the proposed building in green, which has a proposed building length of 18.4 meters. Unfortunately, even with the zoning bylaws maximum permitted building depth of 17 meters, the neighbor would lose some sunlight. We have taken a very close look at this to see if we can reduce the length of the proposed house. However, the dwelling length has been designed with careful intention of the uses and room layouts of the proposed new dwelling for the applicant's growing family. This 4.5 feet increase makes a massive difference to the proposed dwelling, while it would make a nominal difference in the increased shade based on what is already permitted by the zoning bylaw for the neighbors. In addition, although every application is reviewed on its own merit, we do want to note that variances of this depth are not unusual and that there are 3 houses in the immediate vicinity that are even longer than what we have requested. Next slide, please. The planning department has provided a staff report that recommends approval of the revised application with the 5 requested variances. The proposed variances meet the applicable 4 tests under Section 45 of the Planning Act, and therefore we would request that the committee support this minor variance application and approve as revised with the 5 requested variances. In addition, the property owners are also online for any specific questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think what we should have started with is the public meeting notice and indicating the changes that you made, that you are making to the variances. So could we just go through the variance one by one and just clarify what you're modifying or eliminating?
Yes. So let me do. So we are eliminating number 1 for the proposed side yard setback. We no longer require that variance.
Okay.
We have reduced variance number 2 from the 38.92% down to 37.83%.
Okay.
The third variance continues to stay the same.
Okay.
Variance number 4, the proposed building length is now reduced to 18.4 meters from 18.54.
Thank you. And any others?
Variance number, yes, variance number 5 has been removed.
Okay.
Variance 6 and 7 stay the same. And variance number 8 has also been removed.
Sorry, you said variance 6 and 7 are maintained. Yeah, okay.
Yes, they are maintained.
And 8 is eliminated.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Allison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant brought up a point that there were some approvals in the area that were afforded similar building lengths. Actually, I think they noted that the building lengths were even greater than what's being proposed. Could the applicant provide some examples, specific examples of properties in the immediate area that share that variance?
Through the chair, through our research, we did determine there were 3 houses in the immediate vicinity that were of greater length. We approximated that for 54 ESGORE Drive, it was 19 meters. For 22 Haddington Avenue, it was also 19 meters. And for 16 Haddington Avenue, it was 23 meters.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? No? All right, are we ready to take this into committee? Yes? All right, so we'll take it into committee. Comments or motions? Microphone.
I just want to ask my committee members how they feel about the increase in length of 1.4 meters. Do they feel that's minor?
I have some concerns with the one variance at 19.4. While I do recognize there is a reduction, it is very slight, almost negligible, like 3 inches or something. Just kind of going to the letter of concern from the immediate neighbor, I do take into consideration that, the property that would be losing light is directly north. So it would be impacted differently as if it were, south of the property or east or west. And I do just looking, while I do acknowledge that there may be some other properties that have been afforded greater depths. I haven't, at least the applicant hasn't conveyed to me how in this case, this would kind of fit. If you look at the immediate context of the properties on either side, they don't really have the building length or depth that goes back as far. So I think the impact would be a little greater than I'd like to see. I would be willing to, put forth a motion of approval, but for modifying that particular variance at least a meter. I think 17.2 would be more in line. Those are my thoughts. Otherwise, the other variances I think are acceptable.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Would you like to turn that into a motion?
Sure, I will bring a motion to approve the subject application as modified with the additional modification to variance number 4, which would permit a maximum building length of 17.2 meters instead of the proposed 18.4 meters. And I don't see any, there's no forestry condition or no other condition other than the one from C. I think it covers as well the recommendations in planning as we've made those modifications, and we wouldn't need to tie that to any plans.
Mr. Allison, can you just confirm the number you said?
Yes, 17.2 meters.
Through you, Madam Chair, a quick question for Ms. Allison. Are you referring to, is that the number that you want to modify to, just because the...
I would be willing to offer modification to variance number 4.
Because the maximum, the permitted maximum building is 17 meters.
Right, I'd be willing to allow 17.2.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Ms. Martin, seconding. All those in favor? Sorry, could we just put hands up again, just to clarify? I didn't see everybody. So that is unanimous. Thank you. So your application has been approved as amended. Thank you. Item number 7, 596 Soudan Avenue. Thank you. So this is an application for a new 3-story detached dwelling. We have variances for floor space index, parking space in a front yard, east side yard setback. On file, we have a survey, plans, tree photos, supporting material, a Metrolinx memo, transportation review memo, urban forestry memo and conditions, and 3 letters of objection. Excuse me. Do we have the applicant with us?
Yes, good morning. Ali Shakiri, 326 Shepherd Avenue East.
Thank you very much. And before we begin, do you have any changes to make to the application?
No, Madam Chair, no change.
Thank you. We do have somebody virtually. I believe there's no one in the chamber oh, we do have someone in person. Thank you very much. And I believe we may have someone online as well. So, Mr. Shakiri, could you please make a presentation? You have 5 minutes to do so, and then we'll have any questions for you.
Yes, of course. As we noticed, there are three variances. We're increasing the floor space index, asking for one parking spot on the front yard. I have to mention that currently there are like 3 parking spots on the front yard existing on this property. After this is going to be limited to just 1. Because there is excessive side yard on the existing, if you look at the existing survey, there is existing side yard, and currently they're parking 3 cars. After this, we will have just space for 1 car. And also, if you can zoom in to the site plan, I mean, naturally, one would think that we are seeking the variant side yard on the left side, which is the west, but we are seeking the variance of the side yard on the east side, which is the right. So that side, we have a very large setback of 1.07 meter. The reason we are asking for that side yard is the 3rd floor has a little bit of projection. And since there is some windows on the side, perhaps if you can open my support material and go to the last page, I have explained it over the well. So we have excessive side yard, which is very generous. Just there are some side windows, which is causing that variance to kick in. That is illustrated on my support material, the last page. Yes. So if you can zoom into that page, please. Yeah, there is just the one window on the 2nd floor and some window wells on the basement. Those are the reason we're asking for the side yard variance here. Only that yellow shaded area is 45 centimeters setback, which is on the 3rd floor. And if we didn't have those windows on the side, which are safely set back, then we wouldn't need this variance. As a matter of fact, the building could grow all 3 floors to that 45 centimeters, exactly the same as we have on the other side, and we didn't request for a side yard variance. No further comments from my side, but happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Anyone? Ms. Martin?
I just have a question for the applicant in terms of the FSI in the floor space index. You had originally been approved for 0.72. That seems a more minor and a more reasonable variance than the 0.94 that you're asking for now. Would you consider the 0.72, or why did you up it?
Excellent question. I hope if the staff have access to the previous, because we have a building permit issued for this. The previous building permit had a built-in garage, like integral garage, and the 2 floors above it. So, comparing apples to apples, we had a bigger building mass on the previous design. So we all know that the SI is not a definitive scale to measure the mass. It can be higher or lower depending on the nature of the design. But the previous design had a bigger building mass. So let's say the 3rd floor of this design was the 2nd floor of the previous design. And that one would go from the front to the back all along. Now we have it just, the front wall of the 3rd floor and the rear wall of the 3rd floor, both of them are fairly set back. So comparing the mass apples to the previous design, yes, that's the 3rd floor. And also comparing to the previous design, the length of the building is actually less. So the mass of the building has considerably, significantly shrunk while the FSI has grown. And I'm sure you've seen other applications. Let's say if they consider the secondary unit in the basement, this would automatically be exempted from the calculation of the FSI. So they could actually build the third floor in like a complete form without even asking for the FSI. So my, if I conclude my answer is that yes, the FSI is increased, but because the nature of the design, but the building mass has decreased. Just for the sake of precedent and the numbers, I have also submitted some evidence that the greater FSI is approved in the area, but those buildings also have like significantly bigger mass. Most of them have the integral garage, which just not doing that is the is a neighborhood favorite. Now, I've seen many of the hearings and the neighbors are objecting, and the neighborhood associations are objecting to having any garage facing the street. And in this case, we have done so. So my client wants to live in the house. All they need is one parking spot. Currently, they have 3. I mentioned that, and that FSI comparing to the previous one is lower. Like it's higher, but the building mass is significantly less. I hope I answered your question, Ms. Warren.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I have a question. Could the applicant please comment on the transportation review that they're asking for deferral?
Yes, of course. They have, I mean, if you go to the last page of that report where they have listed A, B, C, D, E, yes, that's it. So basically what we think, we definitely leave it into your hands to decide, but those A, B, C, D, E, I don't see any problem with imposing them as condition to an approval, because it's quite obvious what the transportation is requesting here. We actually provided them with the site plan that is dealing with B, C, D, E, because those are just drafting issues that usually is dealt with at the building permit stage. And we all know that before we get a building permit, we do need to get that parking permit from the transportation, which will be done, but we never went ahead to get a building permit from the transport, to get a parking permit from transportation, then come back to the Committee of Adjustment to get variance for it. Usually, first of all, I don't think they're going to issue that. I haven't seen at least this many years that I've worked. And also, usually it's been the other way around. We get that variance, then with that, we apply for that parking permit from the transportation, which it shouldn't be any problem because we are significantly dropping the parking numbers on the front yard. As I mentioned, there are 3 currently, which is going to be decreased to just 1. And my suggestion is to impose those A, B, C, D, E, which is all acceptable to us as a condition of approval. But we leave it to you to decide about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions of the applicant? No? If not, we'll go to the public now. So gentlemen in the audience first, please. Please make sure the microphone's on and state your name and address, please.
Good morning. My name's Al Keevy. I'm with the South Eglinton Davisville Residents Association. My address is 427 Belsize Drive. It's about 3 blocks south of the subject property.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation or provide your comments.
I do have a presentation package. I'm wondering if the technician can bring it up, perhaps at slide 3. While she's doing that, I'd like to make 2 comments. Mr. Shakiri indicated that this particular application is roughly in line with comparators in the broad neighborhood, but clearly not in the immediate neighborhood, the immediate context. The examples he provided are in Sudan for sure, but not within the immediate context as it's described in the bylaw. Mr. Shakiri also offers the observation that the mass is significantly smaller than these other applications, And I certainly do not see that. The mass, FSI is a really good measure of mass, absolutely, and it's a really good measure of scale. And this 0.94 is certainly not an appropriate measure in this particular case. The first slide really points out that the need of the official plan is to ensure that the property, I'm going to get my glasses out here if I need them, should reinforce the physical character of the neighborhood, and that's prevailing height, mass, scale, and density. Density is the key word there. Density has the same meaning as FSI. So the official plan says you must pay attention to FSI. Mr. Shakiri offered the observation that if indeed there was a secondary suite in the basement, FSI rules go out the window, but indeed his proposal did not include a secondary suite. Certainly if there was one there, we'd probably take a different view of this particular application. Next slide, please. The next slide, again, looking at the four tests, says that it must, the application must agree with the purpose and intent of the bylaw. Purpose and intent of all bylaws is to control the use of land, bulk, height, location, et cetera, et cetera. Bulk is the same as FSI, so the whole purpose of bylaws is to ensure that the bulk of the property is appropriate to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The next slide provides a histogram of nearby properties. I've used the immediate context, which is the houses on the street. I always think of immediate context as if you stood in the front yard of the subject property and looked up and down the street, that's the immediate context. If you went across the street and looked at the subject property, that's also the immediate context. In this particular chart, what we're showing is that the requested variance of 0.94 is clearly not within the existing character of the street. I put a little bell chart on the side. Back in my school days, everything was graded on the bell curve. If we look at the bell curve, it's not within one standard deviation. It's not even within two standard deviations. It's not even on the bell curve. So it certainly fails the test of being even reasonably approximate to the existing character or the bylaw as well. Next slide, please. Next slide just provides coverage with respect to the other side of the street. I do highlight we always look, when we go to TLAB, we always look to authorities. The authority for all minor variances is the case of Vincent versus De Gasperis. What that authority says, when you're looking at minor variances, you have to look at two aspects. One is the adverse impact, and Mr. Shakiri has not offered any observations about adverse impact on neighbors. And you also must look at the absolute value of the metric. It's called the metric. So both tests have to be applied to determine a minor variance. Final slide, please. Next slide, please. The final test is the development desirable? In this particular case, we have both abutting neighbors appearing and saying it indeed is not desirable. That to me is sort of the acid test. If the nearby neighbors think it's not desirable, it's clearly not desirable. What this chart demonstrates, if we do a little bit of a shadow diagram on the sun shadow image on the property, what you see is the increased mass and scale of the property actually creates shadowing impact on the nearby properties. Very unusual feature of this property is the very large roof above the patio. Never seen that before. It actually contributes to the bulk. It's not controlled by the bylaw, but certainly is an issue there. Thank you very much. I believe it fails all of the four tests. It's left to Mr. Shakiri to prove the otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll just see if there's any questions of the committee. Anyone? I have one question for you. In your comparison chart, the houses that you listed, are those all houses that have applied for variances, or does it include existing original houses as well?
It's all of the houses.
All of the
All of the
houses.
houses, and
Okay.
that's very important. We must, prevailing means not the prevailing decisions that have reflect recent approvals by the committee. It's prevailing, which is the test. If I stand across the house, imagine it's there. Has it been built? Does it fit the neighborhood? I should point out the abutting property at 598 went to committee in 2017. It had a requested variance of 0.72. 7.2, if we think of our bell chart, falls a little bit. It's a little bit bigger. And we do find that many properties that appear at committee are approved at the 0.72 level. It then subsequently came back to committee and was approved at 0.80. So 0.80 is sort of like pushing the boundary, and I would think that the neighbors would certainly be pleased if the committee asked for a 0.80 FSI on this particular property.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee? No? All right, thank you. I understand we have another speaker online. Go ahead. Oh, you may sit down,
Can
sir.
you hear me? Good morning. Can you hear me?
Through the chair, we have Sean Mendel.
Thank you. Mr. Mendel, go ahead. State your name and address, please, for the record.
Sean Mandel, 598 Sudan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I think a lot of the comments that I was going to make were echoed by the presentation that was just given by the Housing Association for Davisville. So I don't have much else to add, actually. It's just the context of the 3-car pad that the gentleman referred to runs completely between the houses. And while, yes, the existing property obviously is quite more separated from our house than what is the minimum side yard setback at 0.90. The setback proposed at 0.48 is extremely close to the house. And when you look at that design, you start to wonder about a whole bunch of safety measures, whether it's construction, whether it's fire hazards. It just creates, you know, if I do the math on that, probably less than a 3-foot walkway between the two houses. And while today we benefit from obviously a larger distance between the two, the reality of that during construction, post-construction, and then thinking about any safety hazards is obviously of concern. So that would probably be it that I would add, but that was a great presentation by the gentleman before me. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the resident? Oh, Mr. Allison, go ahead.
Just to confirm, this to the neighbor, that you said you're at 598?
Yes, sir.
And what is your side yard setback to the subject property? Because you've got a fairly recent build
I
too
have
as well.
to measure it. Yeah. Say that again. Sorry, sir.
Oh, I was asking what your side yard setback is to the subject property next door, because you're a fairly new build as well, right? So.
Yeah, we bought the house, so we weren't part of the previous application and the process. So we purchased the house from the previous owner who built this property.
Okay. Would you be surprised if I told you you were also 0.48 meters from the neighbor's property line?
I don't think so. No, I'm just commenting on the current distance between the two properties. So I understand that, sir. I was just commenting on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
All right. We have no further speakers at this point. All right. Back to the applicant to address the concerns that have been raised by the neighborhood association and the next door neighbor. Mr. Shakiri?
Yes, thank you. I saw the presentation prepared by Mr. Kiwi. First of all, I question the accuracy of his presentations. I'd like to mean, if you see fit, you can ask him based on what credentials he's preparing those kind of graphs to present here. And also the graphs that he provided, I don't see any evidence. He's asking us to prove what we are asking here, which, well, our evidence is the solid decisions of the committee with date and the the file number and everything, and I don't see any sort of evidence, solid evidence, except that somebody has prepared these graphs. All in all, the front and rear of this building are only 2-story without a garage. So looking at it from the street, it doesn't require any sort of demonstration that is shorter than a normal house. The only mass that goes higher, which still is in compliance with the zoning bylaw, is the 3rd floor, which is set back, and we don't see it from the street. So this house is going to look a lot smaller than the other houses. It's not difficult to envision. And going to the neighbor, number 598, as Mr. Allison mentioned, that house is actually having 0.45 variance approved, and the current house is 0.48, basically the same, like with just a small margin, 0.48 of the side yard all along his wall on the west, and their house is longer than this. I encourage you to look at the FSI that is approved for that house. If you want, I can dig it, but it takes some time. But I'm sure that is less than what we're proposing here. But yet it has resulted in a bigger, longer house. I'm not going to comment about the hazard, but once again, I have to mention that side yard only on the 3rd floor, and that is set back from the front and the back wall, as I demonstrated on my graph. So I think what we proposed here, in presence of the new amendments of the zoning bylaw, naming that if we have a secondary unit in the basement, we can basically make the house longer than this by about 1.5 meters, and the FSI is not going to be counted, and the 3rd floor can be basically entirely added to the FSI. If I basically quote the section, that's where Mr. Kiwi says, talks about the proof. This is the proof. 10, 10, 20, 40, bracket 2 says, despite regulations 900, a duplex, triplex, or fourplex is permitted residential building type if it complies with the regulations for the R zone, and all other requirements of this bylaw were authorized by Section 45 Planning Act, and that the FSI basically is exempted from the calculation if we have a secondary unit, because for the fourplex, triplex, and duplex, they do not count the FSI. So I hope that the panel moves to approve this, because I think what my client tries to do here is very sensitive addition to this neighborhood, and it's going to be their prime residence. Everybody now, I see, they're trying to make rental properties. They have 3 full floors. They add these exit stairs from the back. It's a horrendous to do something like that in a residential neighborhood. And in presence of all those applications that I'm sure you've seen many, adding like a sensitive design piece to a neighborhood, I think should be encouraged. So I have no further comments. Happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Allison?
Thank you. So I believe that the applicant stated that the immediate neighbor next door, who we heard from, has an FSI that is greater than what's being proposed. But I did see from one of...
No, sir.
No, it's not. Do you know what the FSI is? Because the individual in objection is stating that it's 0.8.
First of all, I mentioned, or maybe I stated wrong, but certainly their FSI is 0, the less than what we are proposing here. What my point was that yet it has authorized the building that is longer than us, and all along the west side, they have a 0.48 side yard. That's what I mentioned. But if you want let me see. I mean, while I'm listening to the comments, I try to find what their FSI is. Perhaps, I mean, I'm very surprised that Mr. My apologies, I didn't catch his name, but our neighbor on NOC 598, I'm very surprised he doesn't know his existing side yards. But the FSI, perhaps I can find and mention it momentarily. I already asked my colleagues to dig that for me.
I mean, if you can find it with ease, it'd be just to confirm, but the information we have before us from individual in opposition is noting that that address has an FSI of more or less 0.8. I'm just referring to their material, the graph that they provided showing different FSIs in the neighborhood. There we go. Thank you, staff. If we just pull that up there.
I completely.
Just want a confirmation on the FSI. That's it.
While we're waiting, does anyone else on committee have a question?
I have a question.
Ms. Martin?
So looking at it, you don't have a variance for height, for your building height, and you don't have any variance for platforms or number of platforms or the size of platforms. So I'm just hoping you caught all your variances, and if you don't have a variance for height, and you're able to accommodate the 3 stories, will you be similar height to the new build at 598? Like there isn't, I'm just curious on if you're going to tower over or you're around the same height.
Well, first of all, this is done through a zoning review, so we have a zoning notice for this. It's a zoning certificate, so the variances listed over there are reviewed by the building department. It's not a waiver, and what you mentioned is correct. We are in compliance with the building height. I cannot comment if this is like how taller or shorter than the neighbor is. That requires another study. Having said that, if a house is in compliance with the building height, then we still looking at how taller or shorter than the neighbor is.
Okay, thank you.
That's in that sense, I thought, we are basically in it's a good proposal that we do not have that height variance of any sort for any platform, nothing. And also the variance we are seeking for the side, actually, we are increasing the side yard even more than the 0.9 that is requested by the bylaw. That's minimum if you have a window, and 0.45 if you do not have a window. And I must add that I mean, we don't agree with the side yard variance because we've seen so many other applications, including our previous applications, that didn't have that variance, but all of a sudden this one showed that variance, which we thought it's easily justified, but we never contested that from the building department. But we don't think if that's in line with the other applications.
Thank you.
All right. Any update on that coverage factor?
And one more thing, my apology. That 0.8 Mr. Allison mentioned for number 598 is accurate.
Thank you.
That decision.
Thank you for clarifying that. No further questions.
Now that we have that information, we can go into committee for discussion and or motion. Thank you. All right, committee, discussion. I'll just start the conversation. Go ahead.
I just want to note that the side yard setback is adjacent to an interlocking driveway. So it's not like it's right against the 2-story brick dwelling at 594. Just want to make that comment. And also that the third story meets the height. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on that.
I was going to add to that and say that it doesn't have a variance for height, length, depth,
Yeah.
main wall height. I mean, there aren't that many variances, and I would suggest that the reason that the FSI is more is because of the third floor. And while the other building may have been built in 2017, it wasn't really the style to build the three-story houses. It's a rather recent, what would we call it, development in terms of people adding third story, and it's permitted by also not a story variance as well. So
Right.
the 3 stories is permitted. So those are my comments.
Okay. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, if I may, I would agree. The FSI is the only one that I think that catches me. So in that case, I just got to look at everything and make sure that there's nothing that the FSI is creating in terms of like an undue massing or something that is just frankly too much. But I mean, in this case, it's for the third story. There's a considerable setback off the front main wall and even a setback off the rear main wall. I don't think the impacts are too extreme. You know, if anything, I'm kind of more bothered by, you know, things like the 2-story canopy, but they're not before us today as a variance.
Right.
The only variance really, I mean, the other 2 variances, the parking pad is supportable because there's a lot of them on the street.
Yeah.
And in terms of the side yard setback, it's only for that portion of the third story that overhangs. And if you look at the configuration in the immediate context, you know, a 0.45 meter setback is nothing unusual. The immediate neighbor, which had some concerns, has the same setback, and they're recently new builds. So, you know, I share the neighbors' concerns. I think they put, you know, an excellent presentation for it. The diagrams, everything are really excellent. Gave us something to think about. But I think, you know, I think the application is supportable.
Would you like to turn that into a motion?
Sure, I'll bring a motion to approve the application subject to urban forestry condition number 1 and 2.
All right, and we have a seconder, Ms. Sankar. All those in favor?
Sorry, also friendly amendment
Sorry.
before, just to add in the recommendations noted in the transportation. I think they're more, as the applicant stated, they're more administrative, but perhaps include those as a friendly amendment. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you very much. Ms. Sankar, you're okay with seconding that?
Yeah, the only thing is when we say the recommendations from transport, I know that transport does say deferral, so I just want to check with city planning, like how do we
I think
include that without including that wording?
the conditions of engineering, yes.
Yeah, A through E.
Not of engineer, of transportation.
Transportation.
So the decision will just say transportation conditions, and then we'll just list A to E.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So AT, yes, I'll support that.
And all those in favor? So that is unanimous. Your application has been approved. Thank you. Do we want a quick break, 5-minute break? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. All right, we are back, and we are starting with item 8, 30 Brucewood Crescent. Oh, we have Mr. Shakiri again, I believe.
Yes.
So for the record, please state your name and address.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Ali Shakeri, 326 Shepherd Avenue East.
Thank you. Do we have anyone here in the audience to speak to this item? Don't believe so. And there's nobody online, correct?
No, just wanted to point out, we do have a revised transportation memo that if you need to, we can put up on the screen.
Yes. Mr. Shakiri, have you seen the revised transportation memo?
Yes, Madam Chair. They were requesting deferral, no longer they're requesting deferral for this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, do you want a minute to read that?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah, they did.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so do committee want a presentation on this item? I'm sorry, I forgot to read the read the requested variances. One moment. All right, 30 Brucewood Crescent, it's for a new detached dwelling. We have variances for front yard setback, maximum height of main pedestrian entrance above established grade, height of main walls, vehicle access to a proposed parking space. On file, we have a previous decision from 2020, survey, plans, site photos, transportation review memo, late transportation services memo with indicating no objections. And that is the application. So, Mr. Shakiri, we have indicated we don't need a presentation, committee. But if there's anything you wanted to point out, otherwise we'll see if there's any questions for you.
No, Madam Chair, no comment on my side. Happy to answer any question.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Shakiri? No? All right. Are we ready to take it into committee? Yes? Okay. We'll go into committee.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, if there are no comments from our colleagues, I think Ms. Sanker, I'm not sure if she raised her hand. Do you have any comments? Sorry. No?
No, I
Okay.
think you put your hand up before me, so go for it.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there are no comments, I'd like to forward a motion to approve the application. I think the application satisfies the 4 test. Also transported, no objections. There are no conditions. I do not see that. So that is my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Fazeli. Do we have a seconder? Oh, Ms. Sankar? Sorry, it's hard to see your hand. All right, we have a seconder. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved. Thank you. All right, number 9, 51 Lawrence Crescent. Let me just move along. This is an application to construct a new detached dwelling. We have variances for front yard setback, floor space index, exterior stair width, canopy encroachment, and north and south side yard setbacks. On file, we have a survey, plans, email from the applicant, marked up revised zoning notice, revised plans, presentation, site photos, a community planning report, and urban forestry memo and conditions. We have 3 letters of objection from 67, 45, and 52 Lawrence Crescent, and 1 letter of support from 47 Lawrence Crescent. Do we have the applicant with us?
Through the chair, we have unmuted Maten.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Certainly. My name is Mateen McAdam. I'm a principal at Art House Development located at 3335 Yonge Street. I'm the authorized agent on behalf of the owners of 51 Lawrence Crescent, for which we are seeking the minor variances.
And do you have any changes to make to the proposed variances?
I do. And that was submitted and communicated. But just for the record, variances number 2, which are regarding the FSI, 0.69 has been revised down to 0.67.
Okay, anything else?
Variance number 5, the north side setback has been increased from 0.91 to 1.02.
Thank you.
And also variance number 4 was captured, the encroachment number was captured in error. It's shown as 0.91 as encroachment, but we should be at 0.48. So we'd like to amend that as well.
Okay.
And that's it.
All right, thank you very much. There are people.
You're welcome.
There are people here today to speak to this item, 51 Lawrence Crescent. Anyone? Thank you. And I believe we may have some people online as well. So please proceed with the presentation. You have 5 minutes, and then we will proceed with questions.
Certainly. If I could ask staff to bring up the presentation. Okay, perfect. If you could zoom in, thank you so much. Okay, so for variance 1, we are requesting a front yard setback of 5.06 meters, where 6.08 is allowed. For context, this image highlights the portion of the front elevation that triggers the variance. And just to note, this is not extra livable space. It's merely an architectural feature for continuity of the facade. Otherwise, the house would look very undersized for the neighborhood, in our opinion. Every other portion of the front elevation is not only as of right, it's actually an improvement over what is allowed. Next, please. So as you can see here, the highlighted areas on the ground and second floor plans show the extent of where we are providing a substantial improvement on the front yard setback. So that curved dashed line is our as of right allowed front yard setback. And the yellow area indicates areas where we could have built into but didn't. Next, please. For variance number 2, we are asking for an FSI of 0.67. As stated just a moment ago, we had originally submitted the application requesting 0.69, but after discussion with planning staff, this has been revised down to 0.67, and they are in support of that. The table shows where we sit in terms of previously approved FSI in the neighborhood. We have many precedents with FSIs approved up to 0.7. Next, please. Variance 3 is requesting front steps that are 2.78 meters wide as opposed to 2 meters. And the highlighted area again in this image indicates how minor it is. Next, please. Next one. Yeah. In this one, this is variance number 5. This is regarding the side yard setbacks. On the left drawing, on the south side, you can see how the existing house almost sits on the property line with that dashed line. So despite the variance requested, we are improving that condition by quite a lot. Also, the areas highlighted in yellow show where we are providing an improvement over the requested variance, and in some areas well above the 1.5 meter allowed setback. So you can see on the left drawing, on the main floor at peak distance, you can see that we're providing a setback of 2.14 meters. In that yellow nook. On the right drawing, the second floor, you can see an even bigger setback where at peak distance we're providing 2.74 meters, and that's considerably over your 1.5 meter as of right. Next slide. On the north side, originally we were requesting a side yard setback of 0.91. After discussions with planning staff, we revised that to 1.02. The table also shows where we sit in terms of previously approved setbacks in the neighborhood. I'd also like to mention that the impact of the proposed setback for 53, which is to our north, is mitigated by the large driveway between the two homes. In fact, the separation between 51 and 53 Lawrence is among the largest I've seen for homes on the inner circle of Lawrence Crescent. And I think that's it. So in closing, I'd just like to say the variances we are seeking here today will allow us to build a modest home that's under 2,800 square feet. It's actually 2,764 square feet to be exact. We believe this new build is both sensitive and respectful of the green space in the rear and will be a positive contribution to the neighborhood. We feel confident that our proposal meets the 4 tests of the official plan, and we've aimed to be considerate and thoughtful in our planning. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that may arise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I think we have some questions from the committee to start.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Could the applicant please restate the variance number 4 again? You mentioned that there was an error. Was that error in a public notice?
Yes.
Or are you changing it? You mentioned another number. Could you restate? Because I was paying attention to your presentation. You were not covering the variance number 4. So I just want you to explain it again.
Oh, sure thing. We're happy. Sure thing. Through you, Madam Chair. We'd be happy to keep the number 0.91 as it is asking for more than what we need. But for clarity, when you look at the drawings, our canopy does not encroach past the northern side of the house. And that encroachment, when you subtract 1.5 from where we're sitting at, 1.02, it gives you the 0.48. It shouldn't be 0.91. But we're happy to keep it at 0.91 if it's easier.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, do we have any other questions from committee? No? All right, let's go to the residents. So first of all, we have the gentleman in the audience. Would you like to come down to the podium, please? And state your name and address. Make sure the microphone is on. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Greg Cates. I live at 63 Eastbourne Avenue in Toronto, and I represent the owners of 53 Lawrence Crescent, the neighbors to the immediate east of the proposed home. Through you, Madam Chair, I would ask that staff pull up the location plan as well as the applicant's drawing set, which I think you've partially got up there with A100. Thank you. Yeah, the location plan's great. I'm fine to begin?
Yes, go ahead,
you.
sorry.
The neighbors at 53 who are immediately impacted are similarly concerned as the neighbors who provided the letters of objection about the proposed site density and the reduced setbacks at the side lot lines. We thus have concerns with the following variances that are before you. Number 2, the proposed increase of FSI from 0.35 to 0.67. Number 4, the canopy is to align with the side yard setback. Here the canopy is proposed to encroach in the setback and sit 59 centimeters from the shared property line. That number may be off, but my guess is it ranges somewhere between 48 centimeters and 60 centimeters from the property line. Variances 5 and 6, which require that the minimum side yard setbacks are 1.5 meters. Here the proposed north setback is 1.02 meters, and the proposed south side yard setback is 0.91 meters. Beginning with number 2, this is the principal variance that considers density. The request is for 0.67 FSI, from what the bylaw permits at 0.35. The proposed coverage essentially doubles what is permitted under the existing bylaw, perhaps an indication that the first test of a minor variance, whether it is in fact minor, is not being met. Based on the approvals in Lawrence Park from 2022 onwards, or 2020 onwards, it is apparent that 0.35 is no longer the baseline for density in the neighborhood. The proponent in their materials has provided a series of precedents from FSIs of 0.6 and higher, suggesting justification for the approval of the FSI. Similarly, I would note that from 2020 on, there have been just as many new single-family dwellings in Lawrence Park approved by the North York Committee of Adjustment at an FSI below 0.6. For example, 60 Limestone, 64 Glengowan, 96 and 147 Dawlish, 85 Rochester, 49, 76, and 86 St. Leonard's, 20 Buckingham, 19 and 98 Dinnick, 88 Lawrence Crescent, just down the street. So there are more approvals that suggest an FSI number of 0.56 to 0.59 is the norm in Lawrence Park, rather than a density of 0.6 and higher. Continuing on with the proposed variance number 2, if I could ask you to look at the context plan before you, you will note that Lawrence Crescent is a circle, which results in unusual lot sizes. The outside of the circle, the even numbers across the street feature broad lots, where the backyards widen. The opposite is true on the inside of the circle, for the odd-numbered lots like 51 and 53. These lots are wedge-shaped, or shaped like a piece of pie, where the width of the lot gets considerably narrower as you move from the front yard to the backyard. As you get deeper in the lot, the proximity to your neighbors' homes and side lot lines becomes much more pronounced. Site plan drawing A100 illustrates this. If you could call that up. For 51 from the street, the lot dimension is 16.3 meters wide. However, if you look at the site plan and take a measurement across the rear yard by the proposed pool, the lot width tapers to under 24 feet wide, less than half the width of the property at the street. The size of a typical rectangular lot in Lawrence Park is cited at 15 meters by 45 meters, with an area of 675 square meters. The lot size at 51 is 379 square meters, just over half the size of a standard lot in Lawrence Park. To suggest that you accommodate a home that would be over and above any density approved to date in Lawrence Park by the committee on a standard-sized lot, let alone a wedge-shaped smaller lot, is neither minor in nature or desirable given the neighboring context and the tests of a variance. Turning your attention to site plan A100, you will see the proposed home essentially doubles the size of the current home. Still on the subject of FSI, I would ask you to turn to the area calculations on plan A051. Please note that on each floor, there are exclusions from the calculations of floor area, including a 2-story garage with a parking stacker, mezzanine levels at floors 2 and 3. Per the zoning review, these areas can be excluded from the FSI calculation. However, these spaces still exist in real life and add considerably to the volume and massing of the home on the lot and on the street. The home is therefore much bigger on the small lot than what the FSI number indicates. If we were to add in the area of all the spaces that have been left out, you would end up with an effective floor space index of over 0.85, well beyond the acceptable lot coverage. This is simply an illustration to show the outsized nature of the building that is being proposed. Looking at the proposed design in this context, this does not meet the test of a minor variance. For the reasons outlined above, the outsized proposed FSI for the lot in question and neighboring context, the proposed design does not meet the variance test of being minor in nature. Given that the proposal was just submitted in October, there's likely time to refine the plan. For the above reasons, the current variances as proposed should not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for this wrap? No? All right, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so FSI aside, we were having a bit of concern with respect to the massing of the size, but is there anything specifically that you can point to that would render an improvement as to sort of lessen the impact on your client, whether it's a side yard setback or something?
I think it'd be pretty simple to go back and refine the drawing a little bit. And I think, yes, the breathing room at both sides would be, so I think the suggestion that there's an improvement over the current side setback at the north side may be a bit of a misdirection. There is an existing home that's at half the length of what is proposed. What's proposed is 54 feet in length, over 16 meters long. That is a wall. So what's currently there is, roughly between 25 and 30 feet, and there's about 2 feet that abut that property line that the proponent is referring to. So again, I think that pie-shaped lot is being filled, and if you look at the rear yard, there's a 6-meter long pool with 2 additional meters for steps, and pure hardscape, water which will just sheet off and end up on the driveway at 53. So I think generally it needs a bit of refinement and it needs a little bit of breathing room. Again, there was a proposal down the street that was wildly contentious, is my understanding, at number 75, and that was approved at 0.61, and that was a much more gracious lot. So to suggest that 0.67 or 0.69, that a doubling of the FSI is, as of right, is, I think, perhaps a bit of a stretch in this immediate context.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could we have the next person? I think they're online.
Through the chair, we've unmuted Christine Beelan.
Ms. Beelan, are you there?
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Could you please provide your name and address for the record?
Yeah, it's Christine Dillon on 55 Lawrence Crescent.
All right, you're a little quiet. If you could speak, make sure you're speaking into your, whatever you're speaking on, so that we can hear you. That would be great.
I'll try. I'm just monitoring the meeting.
Okay, you don't have any comments to provide?
No, I think we're not really opposed, but not in favor either.
Okay. Thank
We're
you.
Switzerland, I guess.
All right.
We just want to hear the process.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? No. All right, thank you. All right, so let's get the applicant back to address the comments made by Mr. Cates.
Yes, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair. So just for context, an FSI of 0.35 would put us at 1,400 square feet for the entire house, which I think would be incredibly low for any house. Having said that, I can address the concern regarding the side yard setbacks. Just for everyone's knowledge, we do have the approval of our immediate neighbor to the south, which is impacted by the side yard setback directly. And just a general comment about more breathing room. The challenge we had in trying to be mindful of the rear yard green space, which is the #1 concern for most of the letters of objection we received, is that we had to build into the side yard setbacks to achieve a meaningful GFA. And we did so by being mindful and stepping the house back wherever we could. And just for reference, our proposal actually improves the situation in the rear. We're not asking for any landscape variances. We're not asking for building length. We're not asking for anything that would impact the rear. And so we have an extra 10 feet of room to build out, and we didn't because we wanted to be mindful of that green space in the rear, which was a very touchy subject in this neighborhood. And our client also really wants to maximize that space in the rear for his own benefit. And so what we did was we stepped the house back 10 feet, and then the second story also steps back an extra 6 feet to further enhance the privacy. So to suggest that we don't build out as much into the side yard setbacks would mean that as of right, we would be forced to move into the backyard, which I think would be a bigger problem. So we did take a lot of things into consideration. We've stepped the house back as you go up to the second story to minimize visual impact and also, you know, the overall impression of the house. If I could ask staff to bring up in our drawing set A901, actually, sorry, A906. Yeah, this one, thank you. You can see that in our design study, what we did was we've set back the third story in an attempt to further minimize the impact the house had from the street. So you don't even see it from the street. And honestly, I don't think this is oversized at all. Like one would argue that a 2,800 square foot home is actually undersized, even at a 0.67 FSI in the neighborhood. And again, like if you want to go to the previous pages, A901, A902, A904, you can see that the house, as it goes up, it's being very mindful and actually pulling itself in. And also in the rear, like we didn't have to set back that second story, but we did. And there's no balcony there, again, to reinforce, a sense of privacy in the rear. I think that's about it.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the applicant? Mr. Allison?
Thank you. Just some clarification. The applicant said that he set the building back about 10 or so feet. Is the applicant putting forth that the as of right on this property is 19 meters building depth in a residential detached zone?
No. So we could essentially, we could pull the house further back without asking for a building length variance. The house can actually sit further back.
Right.
Was the point I was trying to make.
Right. I'm asking.
We've intentionally stepped the house.
But that would take you to about 19 meter building depth. Oh, you're saying 17 meters.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're not contesting that the as of right's 19 meters in this case.
No.
Okay. 17. It was just a point of clarification. Thank you. No further questions.
Anyone else? I have one question. When you did your presentation, you noted all the properties that have received FSI variances, similar or greater. Were any of those on Lawrence Crescent?
On Lawrence Crescent, I believe no, that was it.
Or on lots that were smaller than maybe the average, which these appear to be?
Sorry, we have one at 109 Lawrence Crescent, and that's at 0.94.
Okay, sorry, what was
That's
the
regarding the
address?
side yard setback. I'm sorry, you're asking for FSI
Yes.
or side yard setback?
No,
Okay.
it was FSI.
FSI, we do not have anything with the exception of Lawrence Crescent 115, and that's at 0.63.
All right, thank you.
That's lowered. It's nothing higher yet.
Okay, thanks. All right, committee, are we ready to take this into committee? Okay, let's go into committee.
Okay, I want to ask my colleagues here. The one thing that we have to take into consideration is this is a pie-shaped lot, and most of I think that we have a large building being put on a very unusual shaped lot that tapers to almost nothing at the backyard. And a lot of the FSIs that are on the other lots are on rectangular lots. So the massing is not as impactful as it will be here, I think. It just seems, I think, any comments on it? I feel like this is a large house for the lot. No?
It's not a clear-cut application. I think it's, there is certainly some consideration here. And the people that spoke in opposition, they raised some good points. It is, to your point, it is a very challenging lot, and the fact that it tapers at the rear. The one thing that didn't come up, I think when you're dealing with more difficult lots that, in neighborhoods that would typically have larger lots in general, but when you're dealing with smaller lots, typically those FSIs are a little bit higher. And I think it was argued in the case it should be the opposite. If you have a larger lot, then it could may be able to support a higher FSI. But I think in this case, you've got to recognize that you don't have as much of the backyard space, and just by nature that FSI is going to be higher. But the perception from the street, because it is wider at the street, is that, you know, in relationship to the wider lot at the front, the building in relationship to the wider lot at the front, I think works. It's a matter sort of at the rear, I guess is the question, because the lots are tapered, you're going to get more density back there just by nature. I think the applicant did a really good job in terms of, you know, the presentation material and just sort of demonstrating what the impact is on individual variances. I think that was very helpful. The one that, you know, you've got to consider is the FSI. You know, certainly just giving a chart of other FSIs in the area is never sufficient. It just tells you that there are other buildings that do have fire FSIs, but the way in which that FSI sort of manifests itself on the site is, you don't know, right? Unless you look at the individual site, there could be individual circumstances. I'm okay with this one. I think the you know, the side yard setbacks, I wouldn't say that they're an improvement. I think there's parts of it that are an improvement, but it's a bigger building, so the impact over other parts are greater. But overall, I think, you know, with the constraints that the applicant has had, I think they've done a relatively good job in, you know, trying to design a building that, you know, fits within the context. So for that reason, I would be willing to support the application.
Any other comments? No? Mr. Allison, would you be willing to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion and we can see where it goes. So I'll make a motion to approve the subject application with the as amended. I think staff, do we have the variances noted? Number 2, 4, and 5. Those changes? Yep. We've got urban forestry condition number 2 as well. And that is it.
Ms. Sankar is willing to second that motion. Let's have a vote. All those in favor? So we have 4 in favor. All those opposed? Ms. Martin? All right, that motion carries. Your application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, we move on to item number 10, 414 Douglas Avenue. This is for a new detached dwelling. We have variances from height of side exterior main walls, number of stories, lot coverage, front yard landscaping, exterior stair width, area of a platform at or above the second story, and a bay window projection. On file, we have a survey, plans, an arborist report, and urban forestry conditions. We do have a neighbor online. Do we have anyone in the audience here today on this item? No? All right. Could we have the agent, please?
Good morning, committee.
Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Jonathan Biskowski, 301 Keewatin Avenue.
Thank you very much. Do you have any changes to make to the application?
I do not, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. We do have a resident online, so if you could make a presentation, 5 minutes, and inform us about the application. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could bring up the proposed site plan, please. So the proposal before you is effectively for a 2-story dwelling. The request for the 3rd story, which is becoming more and more common throughout North York as well as the city, is due to the excavation of the basement. In terms of the built form, I drove the street and I did put together a photo book kind of showing what the neighborhood looked like. And really, this is one of the only undeveloped dwellings of this nature along the stretch of the street. Every dwelling shares the built form of what is being proposed before you today, which is an integral garage with 2 functional floors of living above it. Again, the only reason for the requirement for the 3rd story is we did not go with a deep excavated basement. Therefore, the actual basement floor itself is considered the 1st floor. What that also triggers is the request for the variance of the platform, which again, functionally is used by the first floor. The actual top floor or the second floor does not have any exterior balcony proposed within it. And what is evident from the site plan is it essentially lines up with the house to the east at the rear wall and slightly extends past the, sorry, Madam Chair, I am a little sick. Slightly extends past the dwelling to the west. Again, a fairly typical built form for which is in the neighborhood, a two-car integral garage with, in my opinion, fairly typical variances we see in the neighborhood itself. That's my brief presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that may arise from the neighbor.
Thank you. Does committee have any questions of the applicant at this time? No? All right. Let's proceed to the resident who is online, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Name and
Perfect.
address.
Hi, I'm Ewan. My name is Ewan Yang. I live at 416 Douglas Avenue, Toronto, M5M 1H4. So I guess 0.6, the maximum area of the platform above the second story. So the allowable is 4 square meters, but they're proposing 13.29 square meters. I'm assuming that's actually to accommodate for the pool that they're actually planning to put in the back. I've looked through the arborist report basically, and I think my concern really is that the buyers have chosen a lot that's relatively shallow. So I think it's probably about 110 in length if it's similar to mine. It is a lot that has 5 trees on it. One of them is gigantic. So to put it into proportion, I think the diameter of the boundary tree that is shared between my house and the house next door is 1.25 meters. And I'm looking out my window right now, so the height of that tree is probably going to be 3 times as high as the house they're proposing to build. So this is a huge tree that's been there for probably 100 years, right? So my concern basically is they're planning to put a pool in the backyard, and they're planning to encroach on the tree protection zone, I think by at least 3 meters, which is about 11.2% according to the arborist document. So my concern basically is that they're planning to put a pool in this backyard with these giant trees. There's a huge branch that actually is going to overhang where they're proposing this pool to be. So my concern is really, they're really going to have to cut back the branches of this tree, and they're also going to be encroaching on the tree roots. And the branches of this tree probably overhang at least 4 properties. So my main concern is really just if this tree is damaged, it's going to fall down and damage somebody's house or sort of injure someone. So from a safety perspective, I'm not sure whether or not this is something you address or whether or not the city actually has their own arborists that will come and take a look. But I think the sort of size of the sort of second floor platform, you know, is going to impact kind of, you know, drainage and water. My main concern is just really like the idea of actually putting a pool on this property basically and kind of harming the tree. So to put it in context, we've been at our house for 10 years. We have a great respect for this giant tree because the branches are very, very large. We had an arborist come in when we first moved in to trim it back, and we maintain this tree. So we had it trimmed back in 2015, and we've had it trimmed back again in 2020 also. So I'm just not sure whether or not their backyard plans and their plans sort of encroaching kind of backwards into the yard are going to impact sort of what's actually happening, particularly with that boundary tree. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let the applicant address that in a minute. Does that conclude your comments?
Clarification. In terms of variances, I guess I just want to clarify that the proposed lot coverage of 38% and the sort of side setbacks at 1.22 meters are kind of consistent with what's in the neighborhood, given that they're actually proposing that the side walls are sort of higher than allowed also. So, you know, I know there's a lot of new builds in our area. I just don't have that data in front of me. So if he could speak to whether or not that's consistent, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else online? No. Oh, Mr. Allison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up question. Can the last speaker just identify for us on the site plan which tree, property line tree, is of concern? And then which parts of the proposed development are potentially, I guess, affecting that said tree? Is my first question for that person.
Ms. Yang?
Is she with us still?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay.
Yeah, could you just point out
Hello?
the tree that's of concern?
So it's the boundary tree.
Let's pull up the site plan. Here we go.
Is it the large one in the back corner?
The big circle, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so your concern is more with respect to affecting the tree. Your concern is with the proposed pool. Is that fair to say? Because it does look like the stair, the walkout basement, the house, they're all outside of the canopy extent. Is that fair to say?
So what I would say basically is the platform that you're proposing for the, I guess above the second story, so that's 13.29 square meters. So that's probably going to at least lie over the root system. I'm assuming that when you're digging down to actually put that in place, and then I think there's some pool equipment around there also that you're going to be damaging those branches. I also have a bit of a problem with the diagram of the canopy because, again, looking out my back window, the canopy of that tree extends probably over the entirety of the width of my property, the entirety of the width of your property, and the rear properties also. So again, the tree is 3 times as tall as sort of all of the 3-story houses here. So it's a really, really large tree. And I think the photos don't necessarily sort of show the actual sort of proportions, I think, so accurately. I think my concern basically is that if you're damaging like 11.2% of the tree root system, basically, but stating that you're injuring the tree, but it's not going to cause any issues with the health of the tree. I'm just not sure whether or not, I think that's completely accurate. Given the size of the tree, I would just be concerned that that tree root system extends kind of beyond your workspace. And I'm not sure whether or not 11.2% sort of injury to that tree root system is necessarily accurate, but again, I'm not an arborist, so.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you for the clarification. And no further questions, Madam Chair.
All right, any other questions of the resident? No? All right, so let's have the applicant back on to address the comments.
Yeah, I echo the neighbor's comment. I am also not an arborist. I'm a professional planner. I will not question the work of this professional arborist who says it is an appropriate injury to the tree itself. In terms of that boundary tree at the back, yes, it says 11.2% of it might be injured in terms of the root system, but the arborist report also goes on to have further recommendation that speaks to specifically having an arborist present on site and attentive to the tree impacts. That all significant roots measuring a minimum of 5 centimeters in diameter or dense root mats are to be preserved. I just want to go back to, we are not here for an application for the pool. We are here for the application for the dwelling itself. And I do believe the only concern that was raised by the neighbor dealt with the deck itself. Again, the size of that deck again is only regulated by the 4 square meters because this is now considered a 3-story dwelling. So that deck, although it would exist on every other dwelling in this neighborhood, being elevated because of the integral garage and the 2 functional floors of living above it, exists on all of the adjacent properties that are here. It is now, just because of the new zoning bylaw requirements of what is considered close to established grade, now deems this a 3-story dwelling. I would also say that there was some talk of the excavation. This is not a concrete elevated deck. This will sit on sonotubes, which will be 8 to 10 inches in diameter, which in my opinion would have a very minimal risk to any of the trees that are there. Again, I would leave the arborist report up to the arborist report to speak to that, as well as forestry condition 3 is also recommended. So that would again take it to another level of review by city and urban forestry. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, Mr. Allison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the applicant, have you had any discussion with number 412 with respect to overlook privacy, whether or not a privacy screen might be beneficial on the one side of the deck that's directly in line with the side yard setback?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, Mr. Allison, we have not. Two things I would just say to that. They are not present on the call today, which may be an indication of a lack of impact. I'm also actually really not a fan of these privacy screens because I think it actually becomes an extension of the dwelling itself and creates additional mass. However, I would leave that in the hands of the committee if you would see fit to make that a condition of approval, if meritorious.
Okay, and lastly, you noted it's a pretty common condition to have platforms of this size off, let's call it the second story. In this case, are there any photos or examples of other properties that have similar size decks, similar size heights off the back of these homes?
Through you, Madam Chair, Mr. Allison, it's tough to get into the rear yards of adjacent neighbors. And as we can see, this is a heavily treed neighborhood. But again, I drove the street, and like I mentioned previously, I started taking pictures to create a photo book, and it was essentially every house that had 2 functional floors of living above the integral garage. And the norm would be to have a deck like this that walks off of your kitchen living area.
Okay, and I just overheard your comment. The topography of the area is somewhat mitigated by a larger or a denser tree canopy, you're saying, at the rear that helps to mitigate some of the sightline impacts between the dwellings. Is that fair to say?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is a heavily treed neighborhood, as we can see here, generally with them on those boundaries between the dwellings as well as to the rear and to the sides. So it's a fairly densely forested area.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? No? All right. We ready to take this into committee? Yes. All right. Anyone want to start off comments or a motion?
I'll just comment to my colleagues that I think that they've been sensitive to that large tree at the back, and through the arborist report they have made, there's some, they've obviously identified the tree protection zone that's going to protect that tree during construction. So I don't think that the tree will be impacted in the way that the house is far enough away from that tree that it will not be impacted, as far as I can tell. So I'm ready to make a motion. I will make a motion to approve 414 Douglas Avenue. The variances are minor in nature and in fitting with the neighborhood, and this will be subject to forestry condition number 2. Is it? I thought it was 2. I have 2 written down, but we could double check that.
Through you, Madam Chair, just looking at the urban forestry report on the matrix, it notes urban forestry 3.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem.
Subject to forestry condition number 3.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Your application has been approved.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 11, which is 46 Manor Haven.
Hi, it's
hold
Sarah Ifra.
Hold on one sec. I just introduced the application.
Oh, okay, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is an application for a new 3-story dwelling with front porch, rear deck, and to permit a widened driveway with an undersized parking space. The variances are for building length, building depth, minimum rear yard setback, number of stories, height of building, lot coverage, driveway width, platform encroachment into rear yard, exterior stair width for the front porch, and rear deck height of, height of side main walls, and a parking space width. So, Ms. Applicant, if you could state, on file, we have survey, plans, modification email, site photos, supporting material, a community planning report, and a transportation review memo. All right, now applicant, you can go ahead and state your name and address, please, for the record. Sorry.
All right, it's okay. It's Sarah Ifra, agent for the applicant, and the address is 313 Hillhurst Boulevard, M6B 1M9.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in the audience here on this item? No. Nobody online? No. All right, so I will ask my colleagues if they would like a presentation. Yes? Okay.
Yeah, I have changes, so.
Okay, yes. So first of all, do you have any modifications to make to the application?
Yeah, so if you'll pull up the supporting material, we'll go through the notice, and I've marked the notice up, which I think will be the clearest to keep everything clear to start. And then, okay, so variance number 1, we're changing to 20.57. And it should be noted that the second floor is only 19.5. We can go through that in a minute. Variance number 2, I'm modifying to 20.57. Variance number 3, I'm modifying to 8.61. Variance number 4, we're keeping as is. Variance number 5, as is. Variance number 6, we modified to 46.08. Variance number 7, as is. Variance number 8 is eliminated. Variance number 9 is as is. Variance 10 is eliminated. 11 is eliminated. And 12 stays as is. I think that's all the variances we've got.
All right, so based on that, if you'd like to begin a presentation for the committee.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you scroll back, I mean, I'll kind of go along each variance. I did write this up, so we did speak with planning. They were looking to try to get the overall length to 19.5 meters, saying that, at the rear, they're very consistent, which is not actually the case. There are a number, which I've included at the end of my presentation, of longer lengths in the neighborhood, but even along that street, when you look at the aerial photograph of it, we felt, because often I'll move the house a little bit forward, give a little more space in the backyard, because of the curve of the street, moving anything forward and kind of shifting things around that way would actually be more impactful on the property than keeping the front yard setback and then going for a little extra length. So what we've done is we have modified to 20.57, where 17 meters is required. At the second floor, though, we are 19.5 meters in length. So, the overall bulk of the house, the length is from the front wall. If you pull up sorry, can we go to the supporting material? If you'll take a look at the site plan, I've marked over in red where we've made those modifications, but I want to show you where the length is. Okay, yeah, zoom in on that. So the length is taken from the front of the garage, which is only 1 story for a certain portion, to the back wall of the house. So the same comment really works with variance number 2. We've modified as well to 20.57 meters, whereas 19 meters is required. This is 1.57 meters longer than the allowable, but 1.07 of those meters are only 1 story, not a full 2 stories. The same thing at the rear. We've modified from our requested previously to 8.61, whereas 9.15 meters is requested. is required. That's 0.54 meters or 1'9". Again, I've had this approved on other houses in the neighborhood. The 3-story variance, planning didn't have any issue with that because that's really contained within the roof and stepped in from all sides. In terms of the height as well, we're talking about 10.29 meters. The visible height is 10.06. It's, to the naked eye, you can't see that. The extras in the slope to drain. In terms of the coverage proposal as well, we've reduced that as well. But again, part of that is 1 story and part of it is 2-story. The 2-story portion is about 44%, which is what planning was hoping we would get to in general. And there's some 1-story bump outs that then bring it up to the 46.08. But again, I'd emphasize that they're 1-story, they're at the front of the house, and it creates interest and, undulation on the elevation. In terms of the driveway, again, 3.96, that's pretty standard that I ask for. We usually edge in a different material, so it doesn't feel like we've taken over the whole front yard. Plus, we don't have landscape variances here. So I think, again, that's something minor, and visually we'll ensure that feels like a comfortable driveway lining up with our garage bump out. Like we said, number 8 was eliminated. Number 9, again, front width of the stairs, very, very minor in nature. We're talking about not even a foot, and that's really because they cascade down as opposed to being one straight line. And then the parking space. The parking space, it sounds like it could be a big deal. It's actually in the garage. And we're talking, again, a very little amount of space. It's definitely fine to open the doors of the car and things like that. And that has absolutely no impact on the neighbors at all. And we're not talking about going down to something that's 8 feet wide. We're still at 10 feet, and that's more than enough to park a car and get the door open and get your groceries out and things like that. So really, those are all my comments. We did try to modify and get as close as we possibly could to what planning was looking for, but I did have trouble with the last few feet because, we're trying to create a home where these clients actually live already. They love the neighborhood and are looking to just reinvest in it. We don't have neighbor opposition. The transportation was in support of the parking space. So I feel respectfully that this should be granted because it really is minor in impact. I'm not going to say minor in nature because the numbers are one thing, but the impact, I don't think it's as impactful as the numbers may suggest. So if there are any questions, if you want me to elaborate on anything else, I'll hand it over.
Thank you very much. Questions from the panel? No? Anyone? All right. Oh.
Yes, just one question through you, Madam Chair. In terms of the building length and depth, I know that you reduced the numbers. Do you have any comparison within the immediate neighborhood similar to what you're requesting?
Yeah. Yes, if you scroll down to the end of the presentation, you'll see there are a few houses in the neighborhood, some of which I did, and some of, well, this one here in particular I just did recently. It's considerably longer, and the rear yard setback is smaller. But at the end there's a list. It's not a long, crazy one, just a few around the blocks that are recent. Yep, there you go. So in terms of the length, you see ours is at the top there, 20.57. There's 22.17, 20.17, 18.92, 19.4, 21.58, 22.10, 19.54. So there are, lengths and depths that are similar in nature.
Are they, I can't see that, but are they within the same street and like very close proximity?
Well, Manor Haven is the same street and down, a block or so. Brookview Drive is also like one street over. Lynn Haven is 2 streets over. But again, also, I don't like to necessarily go and pick things that I haven't done or go measure it online. I like to take things that I know and I've done and I've had approved by this committee in the neighborhood recently. So yes, these are within a couple blocks of this property. But 14 Manor Haven is one that I did as well, and that one is on the same block.
Any other questions, committee? No? If not, let's take this into committee. Does somebody want to start off the conversation?
I could start, Madam Chair. I don't think you could see me with my hand up, but I just wanted to say that I think that, looking at this, at first glance, I thought, whoa, this is quite a lot. But I think given the changes sort of made here today and given that, transportation didn't have any concerns noted, there's no one to speak to this, given the fact that there is at least some ample proof showing within the vicinity of the neighborhood, some of the concerns that we have had could be alleviated by looking at those comparative features. I'm thinking that, it seems to be as amended an okay application for me. I would support it.
Thank you, Ms. Sankar. Anyone else want to comment on it? Mr. Allison?
I have a few reservations just with respect to the overall length and depth. It's just in relationship to the immediate neighbor on both sides, it is quite extensive, the amount it's coming back. And, I do go to the right after the public notice. I mean, there's a really clear delineation of what a rear main wall is of other houses that are not only directly adjacent, but on this block, and then on the block that it backs onto. Again, a pretty clear delineation in terms of how far the houses extend back. So, I mean, my concern is, with this building depth, you can imagine, how much more this would project beyond the datum line of what typical rear main wall of houses on Manor Haven Road would be. It would certainly stand out, and I don't see enough, certainly within the immediate area, to support a building depth of that length. Also coupled with the fact that planning has had some concerns with the building depth, I think reinforces my concern.
I would just say I tend to agree with you because the house at 44 is a fairly new house, and this one still extends way beyond both houses on either side and in the surrounding neighborhood. If you look at Google Maps.
And it's very rare that we see a rear yard setback variance. I think that coupled with the building length is, both of those are stemming from the same issue, the fact that there's just, the building is extending too far towards the rear property line. I think a further reduction would be required. I certainly wouldn't be supportive of the variance for the rear yard setback. If you look at what's left of the lot, the building on it, there really should be a little bit more open space at the rear, I think. I think you're really pushing these backyards to the point where there's not, proportionately, it's certainly in relationship to the footprint of the building itself, it's quite a bit.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. So I have concerns with the building length and depth, and then the rear yard setback, because that creates.
Would you consider?
Sorry, we're in committee, so you're not permitted to speak at this point.
Sorry, it's me. It's Nadini.
I'm sorry, Nadini. I'm sorry.
No, I couldn't
I'm sorry.
hear. Sometimes there's a delay in the voice, and so I'm coming in, and I might cut people off by mistake. So I apologize. No,
Sorry,
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, would there be, a movement towards approving, but you're going to consider a reduction in those specific variances? And, if no one is here to speak in, especially the neighbors who are most impacted, would that be a basis to consider differently?
For me, no. I don't think so, because we're here to, we don't really know the people that live beside. Maybe it's an elderly person who is not that in tune with this sort of process, that type of thing. So I think we have to look at it as, how do we see it impacting this neighborhood, not whether it affects the immediate neighbors or whether the immediate neighbors care.
And I think it would be very hard to determine what that amount would be. Definitely, we could just refuse the variance for building length and depth and rear yard setback and go with that. But it'd be very hard to maybe pick a number in between.
I think so.
And I agree with Ms. Martin that because we don't have anyone objecting, we also don't have anyone supporting it. So, you know, we don't know what the circumstances are of the neighbors, so it's hard to tell. Does anyone want to put forward a motion?
I can put forward a motion to, refuse the application for the length and depth that is proposed. It doesn't meet the 4 tests.
Sorry, can you point out which variances you
Sorry,
would?
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify if she is actually, if you're approving the application but refusing certain variances? Or are you
Maybe
outright
I'll talk
refusing?
it over. I've never done that before, so is that the process?
So I just want to, maybe we should just clarify, are you approving the application but refusing certain variances, or are you refusing the entire application?
I guess I would approve the application but refuse the length and depth.
Okay, thank you. So when you word your motion, we just need the variance number, so that we can be absolutely clear which variances are being refused. So overall, you're approving it, but you are refusing certain variances.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will put forward a motion to approve the application for 46 Manor Haven Road, but I will, with the condition that variances 1 and 2 are refused. As they are amended at 20.57 meters. They are refused.
And you're okay with the rear yard setback?
Oh, sorry. Does somebody else want to make a motion then?
If I may jump in, I've also got some concern with the rear yard setback as well as the lot coverage. I think is frankly just, they haven't demonstrated that, you know, they could achieve a 48.2% lot coverage. I know they reduced it, I think 46.08, but it's still a lot above 35.
I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt for fair due process. Like, we have a motion on the
You're
floor
in
and
the
it
middle
should
of,
be
you're in the middle of
finished,
a
or-
motion right now. So Ms. Martin
Alright.
can
Yeah.
withdraw her motion.
All right. Do you want to withdraw, or do you want to leave your
I'll
motion
withdraw
stand?
my motion to discuss this further, and maybe Mr. Allison can come in with a motion, a more thorough motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to bring a motion, see where it goes, if that's okay. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the subject application as modified in part as follows. So to refuse variance number 1, which was modified to 20.57, that's a refusal. To refuse variance number 2 for the building depth. To refuse variance number 3 for the rear yard setback. To approve variance number 4 for the number of stories. To approve variance number 5 for the building height. And not to get too far, to approve variance number, 5 for the building height, to refuse the variance number 6 for the lot area that was modified to 0.608, that's refused, to approve variance number 7, to variance number 8 was removed, variance number 9, approve, variance number 10 and 11 were removed, and to approve variance number 12 as well, just ensuring no other conditions. I don't see anything from forestry, and we've addressed the concerns of community planning. So that's my motion.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Ms. Martin, thank you. All those in favor of the motion we have on the floor? We have 4 in support of that motion. Opposed? Ms. Sankar, thank you. The motion has been approved, so your application has been approved in part. Thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 12, 133 Gray Road. This is an application to legalize and maintain a rear deck. The variances are for platform setback to the rear deck. On file, we have survey, plans, site photos, community planning staff report, and 10 letters of support. Do we have the applicant in front of us here in the chamber? Thank you for your patience. Please state your name and address to start.
Sure. My name is Rob Rosenblatt. I'm the owner of 133 Gray Road.
Thank you. And do you have any changes to make to your application?
No, there are no changes. It's good that we've kept, hopefully, the easiest and best for last of your morning sessions. Very, very, very interesting experience.
Thank you.
I only had to do this going back to when our home was actually built, which was a very complicated process where 3 homes, of which I was one of the owners, with very wide widths, were knocked down and 4 were built in the place of 3. And one of the other owners was the builder. And the deck that I have has been the deck I have always had. And it is larger than the deck that one of the other individuals has down the street. And I had presumed, obviously incorrectly, that it, like the other variances that had occurred some 28 years ago, was approved. And lo and behold, when we were looking at rebuilding the deck, it's wonderful. It's cedar. It's 27 years old though, and notwithstanding all the maintenance that we've done, staining it and repairing a few boards, it's seen better days. So we are going to rebuild it with a very, very strong synthetic material. It's fantastic. And it was the builder, the new builder of the deck, that suggested to me, do you want to have this permitted or not? And he explained what the pros and cons were. And I said, well, sure, let's get it permitted because it's only like $198 or something. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Nothing could have been farther from the truth given everything that had to be done, the cost of the architectural technologists, the cost of surveys and everything. That aside, it'll be the exact same footprint, the deck that exists now. It integrates beautifully into the backyard. And all of the neighbors, most of the surrounding neighbors have in fact enjoyed a barbecue or a drink or something on there. I did speak to personally and then got letters that you have with everybody that surrounds it. It's a very good neighborhood, thank God. I would just look for the committee to hopefully bless and approve this so that, according to one of your staff here who was kind enough to explain some of the process, so that after some 20 business days elapse after you approve it, God willing, I can then go and get the application that I did make for this and paid the 198 and change, whatever. I could get that approved. Therefore, we have the permit. And I'm hoping and praying that, given that this job won't be able to get done this year, and that the builder will hold good on the price and everything, because it'll have to be done obviously in the spring when the melt occurs. You can't really drill through frozen ground reasonably well. So that's the long and short of it. If you have any questions, I'm certainly be willing to answer. Thank you for your time and patience as well.
You're welcome. I just have one question. Have you seen the community planning staff report where they're recommending that it only apply to the as-built condition? Could be a bit of a concern. I guess we'd have to clarify that.
I did look yesterday online to see what had been posted, and I guess what had been posted were 3 variances, but the third variance is really a consequence of the first 2. If they're approving this the setback one way and they're approving the length the other way, by definition that adds up to what the coverage was. Again, the footprint is going to be identical in terms of width, depth, height, and all those sorts of things. The material is going to be different. It's a much stronger material, and if anything, the deck is on top is going to be somewhat simplified from what's there right now, and even more safe because as per the drawing or schematic, whatever it was that the architectural technologist sent in, the big flower boxes we have are going to be gone. The size of the privacy is going to be a little lower. The railing that we're going to have where the bench seating is going to go all around the deck, so it's actually higher, so it's safer. So if somebody sat on there, it was within code before, but it's even safer now. So I don't know where the issue may lie.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably for you to figure out either. It's for us. So I just want to, just making the statement as a note to my colleagues as well, but we can talk about that. So does anyone have any questions for the resident? No?
No, just through you, Madam Chair, just to clarify and understand what you have mentioned. So it seems that you're not okay with that conditions, right?
I beg your
Just to
pardon?
understand that you're not approving, like you're not in favor of that condition in the community planning report, right?
What condition? Not in favor
Planning
of...
staff report, it says if there is going to be approved, the variance number 1 and 2 regarding the side yard setback, right? And rear wall projection only apply to the as-built condition of the existing rear yard. There is, it's already projected.
I think you're okay with that because you said, sorry. I think, you should be okay with that because the footprint's staying the same. Is that right?
Excuse me, the footprint, the width, the depth, the height are identical to what is there now.
So your side yard setbacks will be exactly the same then?
The side setback of the house was only 0.6 meters, not 1.2. That was approved way back when. For the deck, we are simply saying, and they seem to be okay with that if I read it properly, that will also be only 0.6 as opposed to 1.2. And the depth of it, they quoted as 7 point something meters. That's exactly what we have right now on the deck. So that's my point about the footprint of the deck. The existing width, the existing length or depth, whatever you want to call it, and the existing height are going to be exactly the same as what I currently have at the moment. So I'm not sure where the inconsistency, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Am I reading this wrong?
No, I think it's just the word in the planning report says as built, and as built in my interpretation means the existing deck, whereas you want the existing footprint, but you're not keeping the deck, you're rebuilding it. So I think we can figure that out amongst ourselves, how that should be worded to make sure that, the intent is covered. But I just think if we say with the condition as built, I think you'd have a problem.
You're probably right, because the height of the existing privacy wall will now be a little bit lower because we're not going to have that fancy crown on top that you saw in the picture. The privacy squared thing that faces the far back of the house, that's going to be gone as well. So what you're going to have is just the seating going this way and this way. But behind that seating, you'll now have the Riley aluminum rail system all around it, so that if somebody were to sit on that and was drinking and fell backwards, they wouldn't fall off the deck, even though, as it is currently built, it was within the code when it was built. So the reason I'm saying simplifying, those flower boxes on top, they're going to be gone. My wife hates them, and the raccoons use them as their toilet, unfortunately. And the integrity of it is the same, but in terms of its length, its width, its height, the fact it's a two-tier with steps going down, that remains exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. I think we can clarify the wording amongst ourselves. So I think without any other questions of the applicant, we're ready to go into committee?
Yes.
Okay, you can sit down now. Thanks. All right, committee. Who wants to tackle this one?
I'm happy to bring a motion to approve the application. With respect to the planning or the condition from community planning, I wonder if just tying it to substantially in accordance with the site plan would suffice, or whether we just come up with our own, or just reword what community planning wrote. Let's see. Okay, so in terms of the condition, I would say variance number 1 and number 2 regarding the side yard setback and rear wall projection only apply to the existing rear deck. So the change in that condition is just to remove apply to as-built condition. Is that?
Sorry, can you just start over and reword?
Sorry,
restate?
a motion to approve the subject application with the condition that variance number 1 and 2 regarding the side yard setback and rear wall projection apply to the rear yard deck.
No.
Now I'm taking out existing and I'm taking out.
Or
we want to
why
ensure
not-
that the variances are applying strictly to the deck itself and not the house.
And why we wouldn't just say substantially in accordance with the site plan?
We could. That was the
Yeah,
alternative.
I think that's a better way of stating it. It's clearer for everybody.
I think so as well. Do we need to confirm with the applicant whether or not the site plan is a kind of clear reflection of the, I presume it is, but
We'd have to go out of committee to do that. Do we want to do that?
I was just going to say, we also I don't think we have to approve it and tie it to the staff report if that's the confusion.
we don't. No. We don't want to tie it to the staff report, but we want to put in some condition that ensures that the overall footprint is going to be maintained.
I think if we say substantially.
Substantially in accordance with the
I
site plan
think we're
drawing.
probably fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll revise my motion. Motion to approve the subject application with the condition that variance number 1 and 2 are constructed substantially in accordance with the site plan drawing.
Okay.
Attached.
Attached to the report. Okay, do we have a seconder? Mr. Fazeli? All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Your application's been approved. Thank you very much. Go build your deck. All right, so I think that takes us to the end of the morning agenda. We will be back at 2 o'clock. Thank you.